Hey, it's Mike with Riding in the Ozarks. Today, I'm going to show you what's in my ultimate first aid kit. This is the first aid kit out of my motorcycle. I've already pulled a bunch of stuff out of it, and we're going to go through the most important items and put them back in here. How I built this first aid kit was from scratch. There'll be links down in the description below for, things like the case I use, the products I have chose to put in my pack. I didn't buy all of these on Amazon. Some of them I buy locally. I like to shop and support local businesses when I can. But some things I couldn't get locally and I ordered online. If you decide to use the Amazon links down below, they are affiliate links and they do help support the channel. We get a small commission from Amazon. It doesn't cost you anything extra. So let's get into how I decide what goes in this first aid kit. But what goes in first are the items that I think are most important to saving a life. So May 20th is National Stop the Bleed Day this year. If you're not familiar with Stop the Bleed, we'll talk about that in a second. But I want to try and get this video out at the same time as that because I think that plays an important part of knowing how to use a first aid kit and an important part in why I chose these items. I was recently on a live stream and they asked me if I had a first aid kit. I said yes. They asked me if I'd ever used it and I said yes. And they were all surprised. Let me show you something. So that happened just over a year ago. That was my girlfriend following me on her motorcycle and she had an accident. If you want to know more about that accident and why it occurred, there'll be a link to that in the top of the card here for the video, and there'll probably be a link in the description down below. But regardless of that, I already had this first aid kit. I'd taken a Stop the Bleed class. If you're not familiar with Stop the Bleed, it's a national campaign. So this campaign's initiative is to teach people how to stop traumatic bleeding, because people commonly bleed out before first responders can get on the scene and administer first aid. So if all of us knew how to do that and carried the proper equipment, more lives could be saved. That's my basis on how I decide what goes into my first aid kit. So let's get into it. Number one, I've chosen to use a rat's tourniquet. Cat tourniquet's a great option. People have different opinions about which one to carry and why. Do the research, decide for yourself, but any tourniquet is better than no tourniquet. Yes, you can make a tourniquet out of a belt or out of a shoestring or other things, but these specifically designed tourniquets do tend to work better than makeshift tourniquets. So that's number one item that goes in there. Now that Stop the Bleed class I was talking about, they teach you how to use a tourniquet. They also teach you how to use some other stuff. My number two item is clotting gauze. This is especially important for people that may be on blood thinners or who have a medical condition where they bleed really easily and it's hard for their system to clot. I have a friend like that. He's on blood thinners because he's had some blood clotting issues. And he was at work and I'd given him one of these because I care about him. And he ended up having to use it. He got a cut at work that didn't want to quit bleeding. He used this. He said for me to tell you everybody when I do this video that this shit burns. So yeah, it burns, but it's better than bleeding out. So clotting gauze is especially important for someone who has maybe a medical reason why you need that clotting agent on top of just gauze. This is item number three. It's compressed gauze. This has a whole lot of gauze in a small package. That Stop the Bleed class, they teach you how to take this gauze and how to stuff it into a wound properly to clot and keep a wound from continuing to bleed, and how to put pressure on. I highly recommend the Stop the Bleed class. If you're in a state like Missouri where it has a Good Samaritan law, by taking that class, you've got a certificate that proves you've had training on the proper use of these items to help save someone's life. Item four, just a big old roll of gauze. If you got room for it, that's great. This is just regular old gauze roll. Item five, mini chest seals. Now, I'm not gonna get in how to use these. You should probably get training. There's some videos you can watch. There's some places you can take classes on this if you want. But mini chest seals are designed for gunshot wounds, for what we call a sucking wound. The reason I carry them is if you're on a motorcycle and you were to go off the roadway and through a fence or through the woods or something else, or you were to go over the handlebars of a motorcycle, you could have a piece of metal that punctured your chest from a fence post, from a mirror stem, from a limb that you hit at 40 miles an hour. So that's why I carry chest seals. Item six, 4x4 pads. So These go along with item 6. I consider this a bundle. These are 4x4 pads, and of course you would put these over a gash or a wound that's bleeding but doesn't seem to be deep enough that you might need to stuff it full of gauze. This is what we call vet wrap. You can buy a medical version of this that's more expensive, but I highly recommend you just buy the vet wrap version. It works just as well and costs less. This is actually what's left over from when I doctored April in that motorcycle accident. The next things that go into my kit are things like ibuprofen. I have some single-use iodine pads. I have some single-use antibiotic ointment. I have a tube of triple antibiotic ointment. I do carry medical tape even though I carry the vet wrap, because there might be something like on a finger where the vet wrap is a little bit bigger than you need or maybe a little more bulky, where this would be good if you had to bandage someone's finger. Who doesn't carry Carmax? This is an Israeli bandage. I carry it too. All this stuff fits in my pack. Now I'm going to show you something else. This pack I bought off of Amazon and then I built all this. This is item 7, shears. I didn't have these when April wrecked. I should have. We had to pull her pants leg up around the knee. She didn't want me to cut it. She didn't think the injury was that bad. So I'm shoving this up and trying to get a look at it and everything else. When the EMTs got on site, they cut it anyway. They cut her pants up. She was pissed off. But if I had needed to cut up higher to her thigh or something like that, where I could not push the pant leg up to check for injuries, these would have worked a lot better than a knife. After seeing them in use and being in the situation I was in, I went out and ordered some. I don't care if they're green, black, purple, whatever. Whatever's cheap. It all works the same. I don't really care what it looks like. All right, I put everything back in the pack the way I have it organized. So we have a little pocket here that zips closed. I keep the small items like the iodine packets and stuff in. That folds over this. Then this folds over that. You loop the zippers through each other. That helps to keep them from spreading on accident. This has a buckle for a tearaway situation if you had it strapped to something. And then we have our medical shears on the outside, along with a morale patch that shows that this is medical equipment. Now, when this goes in my bike, I put it inside this plastic bag. Not that my saddlebags leak, but if I had to get this out in the rain, I would just soon keep it dry as long as possible. I might even try and kind of open it up inside the bag if it was pouring down rain to keep from getting rain in on top of the other products that I was not using yet. And I'd pull out what I needed as I went. Or maybe if someone's in the water, you need something kind of, if it's muddy, something like that, something you can put down before you pull your stuff out so you're not getting your bandages in the mud. That's my ultimate first aid kit. And that's why I think one is important. I really encourage you to get the Stop the Bleed training. It's free. I'll put a link in the description down below where you can go get that. So if you use those if you do decide to use those ammo links, all right guys, if you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. If you do that YouTube thing, check out the content on my channel, and if you dig it, hit that subscribe button down below. Don't forget to ring that bell to be notified the next time I drop a new video. And as always, thank you for your support. Stay safe and keep on riding.